Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and on Twitter. I am Bryson Carver, live on the only show where you will find somebody with a Boston Red Sox hat and a Dallas Cowboys hat, which I'm going to be doing every Friday this season. Red Sox opening a huge series this weekend against the New York Yankees, the hated New York Yankees, I might add. Listen, this is rivalry week right now for me personally. You got the Yankees this weekend, you got the Eagles on Monday. So this is bad blood. This could be a few days of bad blood. So, but besides that, we got a great show for you tonight. Gonna talk shocker, Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time. You know, it seemed like every Friday there's something new. Not caused by Tom Brady, but just about Tom Brady that's really interesting, coming this time from his trainer, Alex Guerrero, who openly just took multiple shots at Bill Belichick. And I'll get into that in just a second. And I'll start the show by talking about Sam Darnold. And then for the majority of the show, I will be predicting week 3. We are actually, it's crazy. It's gone so fast. Excuse me. We're in week 3 of the NFL season. I'm going to predict all of Sunday's games. Thus far, I'm 1-0. I picked Carolina last night. I picked them big, so I was a little off there. It was closer than I anticipated. But I'll start with that game right now. Again, great show, but we'll start with last night's game between the Panthers and the Texans. Now, let me go and say this. Let me start with Houston. I'll talk about Houston briefly before I get into Sam Darnold. Shout out Davis Mills. Like, for real. I briefly talked about this kid a little bit leading up to the draft, and then I was on a draft show with my dude Ryan Flowers. Shout out to him. He's been on the show multiple times from a Clutch Sports Talk. Be sure to catch his show. But I talked about Davis Mills a little bit in that I actually thought he was better than Mac Jones. Did he have a better college career than Mac Jones? No. Mac Jones played at Alabama. Davis Mills played at Stanford, which is a good college football program. I really, really like their head coach. But it's not Alabama. I mean, Alabama can make just about any quarterback look good. But I liked him more. Moves better. Can take hits. Is somewhat athletic. I mean, Davis Mills last night was taking some shots in the pocket. I mean, man, he was taking like some hits to the head. He was landing hard. I mean, you hate for that to be your first start in the National Football League because that's tough. But give credit to the kid. He did all he could. 168 yards passing. He was fairly efficient. 19 for 28. That's decent. QBR of 57.5 and a passer rating of over 95. That's not bad for your first start, especially when your team is completely overmatched, which Houston will be most games this season. And I hope Tyrod Taylor can come back because I don't like seeing young quarterbacks just getting beat up their rookie year. Not that I want to see Tyrod Taylor, but he's been around the league. He knows how this thing goes. And he's somewhat mobile, unlike Davis Mills, so he can get out of pressure in ways that the rookie cannot. But listen, Houston's, again, it's kind of like what I talked about the Packers with it's like I talked about the Packers yesterday. Like Houston is, what did we learn about Houston yesterday? We didn't learn anything. We knew they're in a rebuild, and it's going to be a minute before they're good again. We have no clue what's happening with the Deshaun Watson situation. The only thing I feel like I do know is that he has suited up his last game as a Houston Texan. He said that back in whenever it was February when he requested a trade. The Texans, as of late, have agreed that he's played his last game as a member of this organization and franchise, and that is what it is. Now, after probably the longest segment I'll have on the Houston Texans all season long, let's talk about Carolina. They're 3-0, albeit schedule wasn't exactly amazing. Started with a rebuilding team, the Jets. At home last week, they were home against the Jets, but at home last week, just 5 days ago on Sunday, played the Saints, which are then a rebuild. We'll probably know in about 3 to 4 weeks if this is a team that is trying to compete for the playoffs, or at least has a chance to compete for the playoffs, or a team that's just going to be middle of the road. Not going to be an easy out because Sean Payton's an excellent coach, and Jameis Winston, we all know, can play. He's just got to clean up the turnovers, and he's got to be more consistent. We'll see about the Saints. But Carolina proved they're better than New Orleans. And then last night they played Houston, who is no question rebuilding and probably one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the NFL. Arguably the two worst teams in the NFL, along with Jacksonville. But Carolina, the last 4 times they've been 3-0, 3 of those 4 years, they made the playoffs. 2 out of those 4 years, they made it to the big one, to the Super Bowl. Now, let's not expect that of this Carolina team. There's a ways to go. But like I said yesterday, like I've said all offseason, this organization's going in the right direction, y'all. Matt Rule can coach. Reason I knew Matt Rule could coach, the reason I liked the hire back in January of 2020 when they made the hire was because Matt Rule in college went to Temple. Not a great college football program. Won a lot of games under him. Had some high draft picks under him. Like that's, hey, credit to him. He did a good job over there. And then even more impressive to me, he goes to Baylor. And this is in the midst of the Art Briles scandal. There's all kinds of sanctions. I mean, Baylor is an absolute train wreck, and that might be being kind. I mean, they were a wreck when Matt Rule took over. 2 years later, they're in the Big 12 championship game. I mean, programs are not supposed to turn around that quick. And Baylor's a good program, right? They're a decent program, but they're not Ohio State. They're not Notre Dame. They're not a program like a USC, for example, right? You know, USC is looking for a new head coach. USC is a program that if they can finally find the right coach post Pete Carroll, they can be back on the map within 2 years. Baylor, that's not necessarily supposed to be the case. Yet and still, Matt Rule did that. And so when Carolina hired him, I'm like, look, they're not going to be a playoff team right off the bat, but this guy knows what's up. They've drafted well. Remember last year in 2020, Carolina drafted all defense because they had a crappy defense, had no pass rush whatsoever, right? This year, drafted some more defensive players. Drafted a really good player, and I really hope he's not seriously injured after what happened last night. J.C. Horn, who has helped out the field. J.C. Horn, that dude can play. A lot of people thought he was the best corner of the draft. He was the first corner taken in the draft, at least. And Carolina took him. So Carolina put an emphasis on improving their defense. Today, they're leading the league in sacks. Even before last night, because obviously now outside of Houston, they play more games than everybody else. They played 3, everybody else except for the Texans have played 2. Even going into last night, they were leading the league in sacks. So this team could get after the quarterback. And that's a credit to the front office. It's a credit to Matt Rule. This team's going in the right direction. They remind me a little bit of Arizona last year, except I like their coach more than Arizona's. I'm still not 100% sure on Cliff Kingsbury. And so, now the bad news, though, for Carolina, if you're a Panthers fan today, Christian McCaffrey is going to be out a few weeks, which really sucks because Christian McCaffrey, not only is he an unbelievable player, one of the best pass-catching backs we've ever seen, one of the best two-way backs we've seen since, you could throw Darren Sproles out there. If you want to look at the current NFL, I think he's a little better than Alvin Kamara. This dude is, 2 years ago, he had 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving. That's not just any running back can do that. He's a special player. He's a great dude, too. Just a good dude. And last year, he missed 13 games due to multiple injuries. And this year, he pulled his hammy on a run to the left side. He tried to jump, make a move, and pulled his hamstring. The good news is it's not a long-term injury, but according to Ian Rappaport, he is going to be out a few weeks, and he's not going to be on IR, which is big. He's not going to be placed on injured reserve. So they obviously like where the injury is right now, and he should be back in a few weeks. So that's good news for Carolina. And good news for Carolina. I'm going to go and say it because this is the show of bold predictions. Carolina's found their quarterback. I had my suspicions when they made the trade for Sam Darnold that they might not just be going to him to be a bridge for whoever they want to go get next. I think they're buying into him. And listen, Sam Darnold's a guy who came from the Jets. And everybody, including Jets fans, and this is why I feel bad for Jets fans, were just crushing him. Right? He had multiple games. Monday Night Football a couple years ago when he was playing the New England Patriots. They caught him on the sideline saying, after he threw multiple interceptions, "I'm seeing ghosts." He said, "I'm seeing ghosts out there." So you had that. Jets fans made fun of him. Non-Jets fans made fun of him. And I'm like, guys, do you realize the New York Jets is where young quarterbacks' dreams go to die? It's just, even the greatest quarterback in New York Jets history, Jets fans, you would all agree it's Joe Namath, right? Like, Joe Namath's the greatest quarterback in Jets history, right? He won your only Super Bowl. He called his shot, right? They were going against not the undefeated, but the overwhelming favorite, Baltimore Colts. Fun fact, that was the first Super Bowl that was called the Super Bowl. It's now known as Super Bowl III, but that was the first one that was called the Super Bowl. Jets were huge underdogs in that game, going against a great Colts team. And Joe Namath said, "We're going to win. I guarantee it." And they won. I believe the score was like 16-7. Well, your greatest quarterback of all time, Jets fans, Joe Namath, he actually has a career losing record. He lost more games than he won. So even their greatest quarterback, even their only Super Bowl winning quarterback, it was fine. He was, even for his time, he was okay, right? He wasn't a generational talent. The Jets have had, I'm not going to go so far as to say generational talents, but they've had some really good quarterbacks in their building the last 20 years. May I remind you, Chad Pennington, Geno Smith could play to a larger degree, Mark Sanchez, and Sam Darnold. And now you have another talented quarterback, Zach Wilson. The Jets find a way to screw up quarterbacks' careers. Compound that with Sam Darnold the last 2 years going into the 2021 season. Not only was he with the quarterback-killing franchise, he also happened to be with one of the worst offensive coaches in the world, Adam Gase, who I still to this day am trying to figure out how Peyton Manning, one of the smartest football individuals of all time, endorsed Adam Gase to get a head coaching job. Maybe it's because he likes him. Listen, from what I've seen with Adam Gase, there's not a ton of likability about him. He's not doesn't command a room. He doesn't, make you want to like him, really, unlike a lot of coaches. I don't know why Peyton Manning endorsed this guy, but remember Ryan Tannehill in Miami, everybody thought he was trash under Adam Gase, and Ryan Tannehill goes to Tennessee, and he's a Pro Bowler. He's a Pro Bowl quarterback. Now, I don't think Ryan Tannehill's a leader or anything, but he can play. He's a very good quarterback. Miami made him look terrible because Adam Gase. Well, Adam Gase goes to the Jets, and he makes Sam Darnold look a lot worse than he actually is, and you're seeing that manifest itself right now. He's in Carolina, threw for over 300 yards last night, was incredibly efficient on third down, made some big key throws like that 3rd and 12 in the fourth quarter to keep the Texans offense off the field, to, at least give them a shot to maybe, I think, tie the game at that point, or maybe even win the game. That was an excellent performance, albeit against Houston. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to say, Sam Darnold's in the MVP discussion. I'm not going there, but Sam Darnold played well last night. And when you give him Matt Rule and to a larger degree Joe Brady, now why does the name Joe Brady matter, you might ask? And we're going to talk about another Brady, the other, a little more well-known Brady later in the show. But Joe Brady in 2018 was with Drew Brees, right? He was, I believe he might have been the offensive coordinator for the Saints in 2018. If not, he was a prominent offensive coach when Drew Brees came as close as he's ever had, closest as he's ever been to winning an MVP. Well, he leaves, goes to LSU, stays in, as Ed Orgeron calls, a great state of Louisiana. Goes to LSU, pairs up with Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow went on to have the greatest season a quarterback has ever had in the history of college football. Joe Brady was there. Well, Joe Brady left along with Joe Burrow, and LSU is probably about to be looking for a new head coach. I don't think Ed Orgeron is going to last much longer. Brady's in Carolina now with Sam Darnold. Matt Rule said last night in his press conference, he told reporters, he said, if you couldn't tell, we trust this dude. And you don't necessarily hear a ton of coaches just say outright, we trust him. That trust, that's a strong word. And so what does Matt Rule like about Sam Darnold? He's coachable. He's a good kid. He's a good teammate, good leader. I think the Carolina Panthers have found their franchise quarterback. I really do. I like Sam Darnold back at USC. I said going into that draft in 2018, I thought Josh Allen should have been the number one pick. That's looking pretty good right now. And then I said Sam Darnold should have went third overall he would have went to the Jets anyway, but Sam Darnold should have went second of the quarterbacks. I thought he'd be the second best quarterback in the 2018 draft. At best, he's probably third because I think Josh Allen's the best. Lamar Jackson is a close second. And I'm sorry, but Sam Darnold's better than Baker Mayfield. I mean, put Baker Mayfield on those Jets, and it would have been a disaster, just like it was with Sam Darnold. Okay, so yeah, you give Sam just a little bit of help. He's pretty good. There's a reason he was drafted third overall in 2018 out of USC. He can play. Panthers like him. Am I going to go so far as to say I think the Panthers are going to make the playoffs? No, not yet. Well, we'll see when they play, Tampa Bay later in the season. Their schedule doesn't necessarily lighten up. They play Dallas in 9 days. I think they're going to lose that game right now. We'll see what transpires. Dallas plays Philadelphia on Monday. Speaking of Philadelphia, that's who the Panthers play in Week 5 at home. They face Minnesota, Giants, Falcons. Then they go against the Patriots defense. That's not going to be an easy one. Okay, the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are better. Washington's defense, Miami's defense. Okay, they play the Bills, Bucks, and Saints, and then the Bucks again the last 4 games of the season. So I don't think this is a playoff team. A team that might knock on the door of the playoffs, sure, maybe. But next year, I think so. I just think the NFC West is too strong right now for Carolina to get into the playoffs. That's kind of where my thoughts are with that. All right. Had to get me a drink of Powerade right there. No, that is not an endorsement. That is not a sponsor or anything like that. Just keep me hydrated. All right. Before I get into my predictions, Week 3, which is just it's my favorite part of the show. Or the week, I should say. I love doing NFL predictions. It is my favorite part of the week. Before I get into Week 3, let's talk about Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady, it seemed like, has been a topic of discussion on Fridays. Now, a couple weeks ago on Friday, I didn't do a show because I was in Tampa Bay. But, that Monday coming back, talk about Tom Brady. Well, Friday, we asked the question about Tom Brady.
Can Tom Brady play until 50 years old?
Wow.
Talked about that last week. And now, something that involves Tom Brady, but isn't, I don't think at least, Tom Brady's doing. His trainer, pretty well-known trainer at this point now, Alex Guerrero, starting to become about as well-known as Tim Grover, who was Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant's trainer, and now trains Russell Wilson, trains some pretty elite athletes. That's kind of, he's kind of made a name for himself, right? The TB12 brand. My man John, a Yankees fan, I might add. We're going to get you guys this weekend. He says he's going to play till 49, LOL. Listen, I bet against the GOAT. But the point is, Alex Guerrero did an interview with the Boston Herald, and he point blank didn't pull any punches, didn't hide anything. This took multiple shots at Belichick. Like, this is about, if we're going to go in honesty level, this was about an 11 out of 10. Like, this is like Aaron Rodgers' press conference 2 months ago, honesty level. Now, I think Alex has a little bit more merit than Aaron did At least does now, but that's another story for another day. But Alex Guerrero was talking about Bill Belichick. And he said, quote, "It was like Bill never really, I think his emotions or feelings never evolved with age. I think in time with Tom, as Tom gets into his late 30s or early 40s, I think Bill was still trying to treat him like that 20-year-old kid that he drafted. I think that was such a Bill thing. He never evolved. So you can't treat someone who's in his 40s like they're 20. It doesn't work." Wow. So he laid it out there. Now, Tom Brady did a press conference yesterday, and he took the high road. He was talking about how he enjoyed his 20 years in New England. And I don't think Tom's lying there. I really don't. I think Tom really did enjoy his 20 years there. I mean, look, the man did win 6 championships. That's pretty fun. That's pretty great. And he built a lot of great relationships there. He's got a great relationship with Bob Kraft and the Kraft family. So he did enjoy his 20 years in New England. And he learned a lot of things there that he took with him to Tampa Bay. But specifically about the head coach of the New England Patriots, this is why Tom left. There was a lot of reasons Tom left. I said a big reason all the way back in late 2019, early 2020. I said I thought he was going to leave to begin with. Like about around December of his last year in New England, I'm like, Tom's gone. I mean, Tom looks unhappy on the sidelines. He's not exactly, listen, he wasn't allowed to show a ton of personality with New England. We see that a lot now, that he's much more open now in Tampa Bay, but he looked kind of miserable. Like you could tell by his body language, he wasn't jiving with receivers. He had an old Julian Edelman, Jacoby Myers, Gunnar Olszewski, N'Keal Harry. I mean, who are these guys? These are not exactly Gronks or Randy Mosses. These are not name brand guys. And even if you consider Julian Edelman one, A, he never made a Pro Bowl in his career, and B, he was terrible his last 2 years, by his standards at least. And so Tom Brady had nobody to throw to. I joked on my show numerous times that his best receiver was a running back, James White. He was his most reliable receiver. Only guy who could get open, but that's mostly because he was open on checkdowns. I mean, it wasn't exactly like Tom was able to push the ball down the field. So I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he left New England. I think some of it might have been the cold weather, and I think Giselle might have had a lot of input on that, right? Because he said last year in an interview, he said, "You wouldn't catch me dead in that New England winter." Like it gets cold. Like I've never been to the New England states, never been to Boston, never been to Massachusetts or Foxborough or any of those places, but it gets freezing in the winter. And when you could choose 20 degrees in Boston in December, January, or 65, 70 degrees in Tampa, that makes the decision a little bit more clear cut, right? But the biggest reason, we all know, heck, his trainer might as well went ahead and confirmed it. Tom got tired of Belichick. He dealt with him for 20 years. They won a lot of championships together. But it was time. Tom Brady realized, okay, I'm a free agent now. I got to leave. Because Buffalo's getting better and Miami's getting better. And we're really not. And I'm 43 years old. Well, at the time he was 42. I'm 42 years old. I don't have that much longer left. I want to win. Like, I'm not at the stage in my career where I can carry no-name guys to championships. I'm still great, but I cannot carry N'Keal Harry and Gunnar Olszewski to winning a Super Bowl. I just can't do it, especially when the defense isn't what it used to be. And frankly, the offensive play design is pretty predictable at this point. And so he left, went to Tampa, and the rest, as they say, is history. And that history is actually still being built upon. Tampa Bay plays a massive game. It's weird to say massive in week 3 when you got 2 undefeated teams, but a massive game in Los Angeles against the Rams. And so I'll predict that game along with the other ones in just a second. But the bottom line is this. It's just like Alex Guerrero said. Bill never evolved. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, why it really, really bothers me. There's not a ton of things in sports that actually offend me. There's two things that I can think of off the top of my head that do. Number one is the LeBron James isn't clutch narrative. That is simply not true. Look at the numbers. Whether it's on game tying or game winning shots, whether it's his performances in game sevens or elimination games, LeBron is a clutch player. Doesn't mean he's as clutch as Michael, but he is clutch. One of the clutchest players we've ever seen. So that narrative is false. The second one that really bothers me is when people mention Bill Belichick in the same sentence as Nick Saban. Because what have I said about Nick Saban numerous times on the show? What's the thing that ultimately elevated him to becoming the greatest coach in college football history? Unlike Belichick, Nick Saban evolved. He did. Because the start of the Alabama dynasty to what it looks like now, it's like two different sports almost. Because when Nick Saban got to Alabama, they hit you in the mouth, they ran the football and played great defense. That was how they dominated, and other teams couldn't do anything about it. But eventually around 2014, 2015, some teams started to catch up. Ohio State beat Alabama in 2014. The year prior, Auburn beat Alabama in 2013, albeit on the kick six, the greatest play in college football history, but they beat them. Right? Other teams were catching. Clemson was starting to catch up. Oklahoma, Ole Miss beat Alabama in 2015 in the regular season on the road in Tuscaloosa. So the gap was starting to close. Alabama was still great, but slowly but surely the gap was starting to close between them and everybody else. And what did Nick Saban do? He said, okay, I got to change this. The game is moving away from only running the ball and playing great defense. We can still do that. We can still run the ball. We can still have great running backs. And we can still obviously recruit great defensive players. But I got to start having some elite quarterbacks. Elite college quarterbacks. So what do they do? Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, now Bryce Young. He's changed. He's evolved. And as a result, since he did that, he's won, after obviously they lost to Clemson in 2016, but since that, he's won another couple championships. And shocker, Alabama's number one right now. Bill Belichick, on the other hand, the Patriot way. There's one way to do it. No, there's not. Lighten up a little bit. You don't have to be so rigid. I mean, folks, if you watch any interview with any New England Patriots player outside of Gronk, and obviously Gronk isn't a Pat anymore, any current Patriots player, whether it's Devin McCourty, whether it's Mac Jones, whether it's Stephon Gilmore, Dante Hightower, anybody, and these guys are good guys. I'm not taking shots at them at all. To me, it's not really their fault. They all sound the same. They all say the same thing every single interview. And as Danny Amendola, a former Patriot, said going into Super Bowl 55, there was no Patriot way. There was the Tom Brady way. Remember in The Last Dance when there was the GMs win championships? Jerry Krause, the great GM of the Chicago Bulls in the 1990s. He said, we put together championships, and Michael Jordan was like, no, players and coaches win championships. Well, Michael Jordan left, and Scottie Pippen left, and Phil Jackson got fired, and all of a sudden the Bulls were terrible, right? You need great players. Like Tom can't do it by himself. There were even reports after Tom had left New England and went to Tampa Bay a couple of springs ago. Some Patriots assistant coaches, anonymous, they said, we can win with a lot of quarterbacks. Well, they signed Cam Newton in June. Actually, it was actually my birthday. They signed Cam on my birthday of 2020. Cam's pretty good. He's not 2015 MVP Cam, but he's no scrub. And they went 7-9. Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, a team that had just been 7-9, and helped them to become champions in many different ways that I've detailed in many previous episodes. In that, first of all, he brought leadership. Second of all, he and the coaches, especially during the bye week in week 13 last year, talked about it. What do we need to improve on? Where do we need to get better? We're 7-5. We're not exactly where we want to be. And Tampa didn't lose a game the rest of the season. Add to it, Tom brought Leonard Fournette in and Gronk in and Antonio Brown in. Bruce Arians didn't want Antonio Brown. He didn't. Openly, he did not want Antonio Brown. A few days later, Antonio Brown signs with the Buccaneers. Whose decision do you think that was? So that's what I'm saying, is that Bill never gave Tom a voice. And just a memo, Aaron Rodgers, I get it. You want say in the Packers organization. I'm not necessarily saying you're completely wrong. You've got some good points. They let go of players in the past that they probably shouldn't have. But Tom Brady got no say in the Patriots organization. And still, he's taking the high road. Just throwing that out there. But Alex Guerrero hit the nail on the head. Bill never evolved. And so, if I got to hear Belichick in the same discussion as Saban, I'm going to go crazy because it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So, but Alex Guerrero, man, laid it out there. So, there you go. All right, here we go. Week 3. Panthers played the Texans last night. Thursday Night Football. Got one game down, 15 to go. 14 of those will be played on Sunday, 2 days from now. Got some excellent games to be played in the NFL this weekend. Some that are literally must-watch games. You cannot miss some of these games that are going to be played. So let's jump right into it. My week 3 NFL predictions. Last week, I rebounded from an average 9-7 week 1. As you can see down there, I went 11-5, so pretty good. I was on the money on my, if I were a betting man, I was wrong on my upset of the week, but I hope to be right on both of those this week. And listen, thus far I'm 1-0. And FYI, my total pick'em record is 20-12. So winning record pretty comfortably. So hopefully I can add on that. So let's start with 2 playoff teams from last year, 2 1-1 teams, the Washington football team and the Buffalo Bills. Now, in this game, Buffalo is favored -7.5. Now, Washington's got Taylor Heineke. They're coming off a nail-biting a game they probably shouldn't have won against the New York Giants. I said last week, I think the Giants beat themselves more than Washington beat them. But listen, Taylor Heineke, I think, fits that system better than Ryan Fitzpatrick did. I give Washington more of a chance to win on Sunday with Taylor Heineke as opposed to Fitzpatrick. We all know they have great defense, although they've gotten off to a little bit of a shaky start against the Chargers and against the Giants offenses. And they got to go against a Buffalo offense that is no joke. Josh Allen struggled a little bit out the gate. He's only completing a little over 50% of his passes, but it's only a two-game sample size. He'll get better. And I've got Buffalo getting to the Super Bowl and Washington missing the playoffs. Buffalo's at home. These are 2 excellent coaches, Ron Rivera and Sean McDermott. That said, I do believe Buffalo will cover, and I think the Bills will win this game 31-20. 31-20, they'll go to 2-1. Washington will drop to 2-1. This game will be at 1 p.m., as you can see right there on Fox. All of these times are Eastern time, as mentioned prior. So I've got the Bills going to 2-1, winning their second straight game, 31-20. Now, this one, I was going to watch, but now I have to watch. So there's a difference between, I'll watch it, and then my eyes have to be fixed on the TV for this one. the Chicago Bears and the Cleveland Browns. Now, here we go, because Cleveland played okay last week against Houston. Probably could have played a lot better. Chicago, on the other hand, is coming off a win last week against the Bengals. They're on the road in Cleveland. And Justin Fields is getting his first ever NFL start. Talked about Justin Fields yesterday. Matt Nagy is in a really, really tough position because he's all, even yesterday, he keeps saying, Andy Dalton's our guy. Andy Dalton's our guy. Andy Dalton is our guy. And I'm like, why? Do you want to keep your job or do you want to tick Bears fans off? Because thus far, it seems like he's ticking Chicago Bears fans off, and Andy Dalton's hurt, and so Justin Fields will start. Now, he said, Matt Nagy, head coach, said that when Andy is healthy, he's our starter. Well, what happens if, even if the Bears don't win this game and Justin Fields goes and balls out, throws for 240 yards, throws for a touchdown, runs for a touchdown, and Chicago either wins or almost beats a Cleveland team that is almost guaranteed to be in the playoffs? On the road, by the way. It gets really interesting because now Matt Nagy's in a really tough position, because if he goes back to Andy Dalton, he's almost guaranteed he's gone. He's going to get fired. So with that said, Justin Fields getting his first start against the Cleveland Browns, a defense that is going to be better later in the season, but I'm still not bought into them quite yet. Talking about Cleveland's defense, 2-1-1 teams. The line right now, by the way, is Browns -7. I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns to win close. I do not think they cover. They win 28-23 over the Chicago Bears. I think Justin Fields keeps them in it. I think he makes this game interesting, fun. He can move around unlike Andy Dalton. And here you go. John says smokescreen. I am curious as to what you're referring to as a smokescreen. Please clarify in the comments. I will put it back up. I don't know if you're talking about Cleveland or Chicago, but I think Cleveland wins. They don't cover, though. But listen, Justin Fields gives them a better chance to win than Andy Dalton, point blank. Is he a better quarterback today? Probably not. But then again, he is a rookie. He's shown the ability. He's not Trey Lance, in that Trey Lance needs more practice, right? Like, Trey Lance, before the preseason, played one football game in like a year and a half. I mean, he barely played any real football at all, and he needs reps. Justin Fields is ready to go. He's ready right now. I mean, this is a bad Bears offensive line, and Andy Dalton can't move around. Fields at least can. So if the play breaks down because of the O-line, at least Fields can run around and get you 5 yards or more. He can do that for you. John says, as Nagy's saying, Andy's their guy. Yeah. You're probably right. Now, I guess it would be a little bit easier for him if Fields plays bad against Cleveland, and it's like, okay, Bears fans, you saw what you saw. He's not ready yet. Maybe he could sell that to the fan base. Maybe. I still don't know if that would necessarily be the best message to send to the Bears or the Bears fans or even to Justin Fields. But, yeah, you're probably right. It is probably a smokescreen, but we'll see. All right, up next is a game that I thought about making my If I Were a Betting Man game of the week, but the team's terrible, so I can't just do the same old bad teams every week. That'd get kind of boring, and it kind of takes some of the interesting out of the game and out of the segment for the week. Baltimore Ravens, Detroit Lions. I don't know what much I have to say about this game. Baltimore's a championship contender. Detroit's not going to win more than 2 or 3 games, even they're at home, even though they're at home. So with that said, I'm going to take the Ravens to win big, 45-21. Keep this in mind, and I threw this stat out there yesterday. Jared Goff is 0-9 when Sean McVay is not his head coach. That, of course, counts his rookie year when he did not win a single game as a starter, and it counts this year thus far, 0-2 with Mr. Mr. Bite Your Ankles himself, Mr. Dan Campbell. So that's the reality right now for the Detroit Lions. Baltimore wins this game easily, 45-21 on the road in Detroit, and Lamar runs wild on them. This is an interesting one. Divisional game in a division that is not very good, the AFC South. Indianapolis Colts, Tennessee Titans. Colts are 0-2, coming off 2 home losses to Seattle and the Rams. I actually had them as my upset of the week last week, and if Carson Wentz actually finished the game, like some injured quarterbacks do sometimes, they might have had a chance to win, or at least send the game to overtime. But shocker, Carson Wentz got hurt again and was not reliable. Was not their first team again, and we have no idea if he's going to play this weekend. None. Frank Reich has said he's practiced, so he may very well play in Nashville, in the Music City, against the Titans. But Tennessee right now is coming off cloud 9 because they went into Seattle, a game that I gave them no chance to win. A lot of people gave them no chance to win. I had Seattle winning easily by a little less than 3 touchdowns. But Tennessee went into Seattle down 14 in the fourth quarter and won. Won the game in overtime, scored 17 unanswered to shock and upset the Seahawks in a full stadium, which we all know the 12th man in Seattle is crazy. Great of a fan base as there is in the league. And they went in there and shocked them. And Derrick Henry gave me a lot of fantasy points, 41 to be exact. But Tennessee right now is not better. I don't believe Tennessee is better than Indianapolis. But they've got a better quarterback. They certainly have a better running game. And that's, Indianapolis has an amazing running game, but Derrick Henry is just a different beast. He's the best running back in football without a question. And I don't trust Indianapolis' quarterback. I don't. I had them making the playoffs, but Carson Wentz has not shown the ability to stay healthy, to put up multiple good performances in a row. And that's why I'm going to take the Tennessee Titans as they are favored -5.5 to cover and win this game. I'm only having it as a close game because it's a divisional rivalry, but Tennessee wins easily and comfortably 27-21, and they go to 2-1 on the season. The good news, though, for the Colts, even if they do lose, again, this is a bad division. They still got 4 games that they will probably win all 4 against Jacksonville and against Houston. Both teams are awful in their division. So that's like 4 guaranteed wins right there for the Indianapolis Colts, but they've got some games in there against Tampa. I think they might play Buffalo. So there's tough games. There's some cakewalks within their division. I think they can split with Tennessee, but this is on the road. Titans are flying high right now. I'm going to take Tennessee to win easily 27-21 and cover the spread -5.5. Let's go to another divisional rivalry. Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City's coming off a pretty tough loss last week against Baltimore. Had an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter and gave up 12 straight to ultimately lose the game, and lost in pretty heartbreaking fashion too, because they're down 12. Lamar scores that touchdown. Mahomes in 2 plays gets them all the way into field goal range, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as the Chiefs are trying to run down the clock, fumbles. And the Ravens, of course, recover. They run the clock out. So Kansas City's going to play motivated. They're at home. Arrowhead is going to be just about as you expect Arrowhead to be. Chargers coming off a tough loss last week to my Cowboys. They had 12 penalties in that game. 12! That can't happen. And it makes me worry a little bit about their head coach, Brandon Staley. I like him. I think he was a good hire, but the Chargers, it looks like, are doing Chargers things. They struggle in close games. They struggle to stay disciplined. And with that said, I've got Kansas City winning 27-21. I think this is a fairly high-scoring game. Listen, Kansas City is better than the Chargers, but historically the Chargers have played the Chiefs close in recent years. And so I think it'll be an interesting game, to say the least. Justin Herbert's going to always give you a shot to win these games, but I think Kansas City does they don't cover the spread. It's actually -6.5. I don't think Kansas City covers, but they do win the game ultimately 26-21. This is one of the hardest ones to predict of the week for me. New Orleans Saints visiting Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots. This was a tough one because the Saints, embarrassed Green Bay in week 1, and then they go on the road and kind of stink up the joint, lose 26-7 against Carolina. Jameis Winston didn't look so good in week 2 as opposed to week 1 when he threw 5 touchdown passes. On the other hand, New England didn't look so great offensively against Miami. And even against the Jets, when the defense caused 4 turnovers, what did Mac Jones do? Virtually nothing. But New England won because their defense is outstanding, and the Jets are kind of terrible. And the New England Patriots are obviously a much better team. So this game's in Foxborough. I think it's close. New England right now is favored -3. So Vegas is saying this is a pick'em game, and which didn't surprise me. Like when I first looked at this game before I looked at the spread, I'm like, God, this is a tough one. And Vegas believes the same because we all know the home team gets 3 points. New England's favored -3. They're not giving New England anything more than what the automatic point spread is going into any game. And so with that said, I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints to win this game 26-23. I think they win on a game-winning field goal. Listen, this Saints defense is going to get after Mac Jones. I think the Patriots defense is going to keep them in the game because Jameis is going to make a few boneheaded mistakes like he is prone to do sometimes. And that's going to keep New England in the game, set him up in good field position just like last week against the Jets. But listen, this is a tough matchup for New England's offensive line, and especially for their quarterback, who once he gets under pressure, the play is over. It's over. I mean, in college, Mac Jones struggled to run away from defensive tackles when they pressured him, which that is concerning to say the least if you are a Patriots fan. So I've got the Saints winning 26-23. They go back to a winning record, 2-1. And I believe next week they will be playing their first game of the season in the Superdome. If the Superdome is ready, because I saw something fell through the roof at the stadium. So, man, thoughts and prayers with the city of New Orleans. They can't catch a break right now with the hurricane and now with some stadium issues. So hopefully the Saints are able to get back next week. But I think they survive. I think they hang on and beat the Patriots on a game-winning field goal, 26-23. Another pretty difficult game to predict. You got the New York Giants taking on the Atlanta Falcons, hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Giants are favored -3. So again, Vegas is saying this is a pick'em. Shockingly, Atlanta actually played Tampa Bay close through 3 quarters or so, and then Matt Ryan on 2 straight passes through 2 straight pick sixes, and that was pretty much all she wrote. And Brady ended up throwing his 5th touchdown in the 4th quarter to compound upon it. Listen, Atlanta's defense is awful. Their offense looked better last week against Tampa than it did in week 1 when they scored a mere 6 points against the Philadelphia Eagles and just got manhandled. And ultimately, Tampa Bay showed that they are a lot better than Atlanta. And in the case of the New York Giants, listen, Denver looked better in week 1, overpowered them. Daniel Jones, bad case of the fumbles once again. Teddy Bridgewater outplayed him. And while I like Teddy, low-end starter, high-end backup, that's kind of concerning for the Giants if a fringe starter is outplaying the guy that you're really crossing your fingers is your franchise quarterback. I don't think he is, although he played well last week. Danny Dimes played his best game last week against Washington, and they still found a way to lose. But with that said, I will take the New York Giants to score a lot of points and win this game and cover the spread 34-28. 34-28. Atlanta's defense, once again, is absolutely atrocious, and the Giants are going to move the ball up and down the field, these guys. Again, both teams seeking their first win of the season. They're both 0-2, and I believe it will be the New York Giants, who I like more this year than the Atlanta Falcons, to get their first win of the season, 34-28. I think Daniel Jones throws a party with all those great weapons that he does have. You got Kyle Rudolph, and you got Kenny Galladay and Sterling Shepard and all these different guys. And Saquon Barkley will look to have a bounce-back game. And so I'll take the Giants to win this game 34-28. So right now it is time for our upset of the week. Our upset of the week, we are 1-1 on those predictions. I picked Arizona to beat Tennessee in week 1. That was right on the money. And then some. Arizona won that game, not even close. And then last week I picked the Colts to beat the Rams. And I was, of course, way off on that one. My upset of the week this week happens to be a division matchup in which the home team, the team I think will lose, is favored -3. So yet another pick'em game by Las Vegas. And I think it will be the road team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, my beloved Cincinnati Bengals will go on the road and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-24. Listen, Big Ben cannot push the ball down the field. The elbow surgery a couple years ago was pretty much it for him. And it sucks because Ben's a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback, 2-time Super Bowl champion. Personally, he's really turned his life around, some of the demons that he struggled with, but he can't push the ball down the field anymore. He just can't. And this Steelers defense got absolutely carved up, to use the title name of the show, against the Las Vegas Raiders last week by Derek Carr. Albeit Derek Carr has a better offensive line than Joe Burrow, so I think the Steelers defense will get up in his face. But I also think Ben will make, kind of like Jameis Winston, doing what I think is going to keep the Patriots in the game. I think Ben is going to make a couple mistakes, whether it be a fumble, missed throw, interception, whatever it may be. I think he's going to make a mistake or two that's going to keep Cincinnati hanging around. And I think they go on the road to Heinz Field and go to 2-1, a winning record, and win 27-24. So another game that is a pretty easy prediction here for just about anybody. You got the Arizona Cardinals going to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Arizona's 2-0, Jacksonville's 0-2. Jaguars look absolutely atrocious through 2 weeks. You know, I said before the season, look, Trevor's going to be a generational talent. I'm not big on Urban Meyer. I'm just not. I don't see it. Not necessarily from the fact that they're 0-2. That's fine. That happens with rookie coaches. But you've already heard reports that some of the guys in there, some of the veteran guys in Jacksonville, they don't necessarily like Urban Meyer. They're not really bought into what he's selling. And thus far, I mean, they got dominated by Houston. Like, Houston's also bad, and they got dominated by Houston. You know, this is a Jaguars team that's going to struggle to win 2 games. For real. I had them winning 2 games. I might have had them winning 3. I don't know, but they're not even coming close to the playoffs this year. That said, Arizona's a team that's going to make the playoffs this year. They're going to get their 3rd win of the season, go to 3-0, just like the Panthers, and go to 38-20. 38-20. The Cardinals will beat the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road very, very convincingly. Kyler Murray will throw a party on that Jags defense. All right. It is time for...
We're a betting man.
A betting man, I would take with the spread -10. Big spread right there. But I will take the Denver Broncos to beat the New York Jets 30-16. This is about as nightmarish a scenario for the Jets as you could possibly have. You got Zach Wilson, your rookie quarterback, coming off of 4 interceptions last week against New England. So you're going to try and do whatever you can to build his confidence back up, right? Well, you're going on the road to Denver. It's actually the Broncos' home opener, so you know that crowd's going to be crazy. They're going to be real excited. And this Denver defense is no joke. Von Miller looks like prime Von Miller. Bradley Chubb's getting to the quarterback. Patrick Surtain looks like about what you thought Patrick Surtain would be going into the draft, and that's a top corner already in this league. And Zach Wilson is going to have a lot of problems. I gave them 16. That might be generous. I probably should have only gave them 10, but Denver's going to win this one easily. If I were a betting man, I would take the Denver Broncos to win this game 30-16 and cover the spread without a question. I mean, Denver is a hard team to beat at home, obviously in that altitude. You're trying to build Zach Wilson's confidence, and this is the nightmare scenario for the Jets going into week 3. Jets will drop to 0-3, and the Broncos will go to 3-0. Teddy Bridgewater, Teddy Two Gloves, 3-0. Let's go to, I'm not sure what to think of this game. Miami Dolphins, Las Vegas Raiders. It is unlikely that Tua will play with the rib injuries, so Jacoby Brissett is most likely to get the start for the Dolphins against the Vegas Raiders. This is a game I thought about picking Miami in the upset, going with them in my upset of the week, but I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to take the Raiders to win this game and them also going to 3-0, 31-21. Because here's the thing that I think Brissett will do to keep the Dolphins in the game, at least somewhat. Unlike Tua, he can push the ball down the field. Remember when Phillip Rivers ended up being the last NFL game he's ever played? The playoff game last year against Buffalo, when they were in Hail Mary range, they had to take Phillip Rivers off the field and put Jacoby Brissett in. That's A, because Phillip Rivers couldn't get it to the end zone at that stage in his career at age 40. It's also because, hey, Jacoby Brissett's got a pretty good arm. Is he better than Tua today? I don't know. Jury's still out. You never know. We may know after Sunday against the Raiders, but I will take Las Vegas to win 31-21. This is a Vegas team that I had winning 4 games this year. And they're going to get 75% of that in the first 3 weeks of the season. So I think I've, thus far, not saying they're a playoff team yet, not going there yet, but thus far, my bad, John Gruden. My bad, Derek Carr. I've always believed in Derek Carr, not so much John Gruden, but my apologies. And hey, they're going to go to 3-0 this weekend, I believe. This is the game of the week. No question about it. This is going to be the game that I think gets the highest ratings. Maybe, you know what? The Monday Night Football game, Dallas-Philly, will probably get bigger ratings than this one because it's the Dallas Cowboys. But this one's going to come awfully close. You got 2 Super Bowl contenders. The 2 teams I believe will have the 2 best records in the NFC. The defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on the road all the way to Inglewood, California, in beautiful SoFi Stadium to take on the Los Angeles Rams. 2 Super Bowl contenders, I believe, without a question. I mean, of course, Tampa Bay is. They brought back everybody from their Super Bowl winning squad last season. That goes without saying. But you got a Rams team that added Matthew Stafford, and so far, so good. They're 2-0. Matt Stafford looks excellent now that he actually, isn't stuck in Detroit, a lot like what we talked about with Sam Darnold earlier in the show. And the Rams look really good right now. And Tampa Bay in this game is favored -1.5. So they've got the Buccaneers as road favorites, which surprises me a little bit because their best or second best pass rusher, JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, is out with an injury. AB, Antonio Brown, got hurt last week against Atlanta. He is also out. Now, the good news for Tom Brady, it isn't like he has a shortage of weapons. This isn't like him in New England. He's still got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronk, Gio Bernard coming out of the backfield, Cameron Brate. He's got a plethora of weapons. Scotty Miller. I mean, that's not the issue. Offensive line is still great, but I think Aaron Donald is going to get a couple sacks. I'm going to predict Aaron Donald gets a couple sacks on Tom Brady, and I'm going to take the upset. I'm going to take the Los Angeles Rams to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sorry, Tampa fans. Sorry, Tom fans. Sorry, Skip Bayless. They are not going 20-0. Okay, nobody in the NFL is going 20-0 this year and for a very long time. Do you realize how hard that is to go 20-0? It ain't happening, even as great as Tampa Bay is, even though I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this season. I think they fall on Sunday in the game of the week, not just hype-wise, but I do believe this will be the best game of the weekend. Rams win 35-31. They go to 3-0, and they hand the Buccaneers their first loss in 10 months. So we kind of go downhill from here a little bit, although these next 2 games are fairly interesting. This one I thought about possibly making my upset of the week. Seattle Seahawks, Minnesota Vikings. I guess I already kind of spoiled it there. Upset of the week. I thought about making it that. I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings to beat Seattle on Sunday. They're at home. They're desperate. They're 0-2. They want to try and make a run at this division. I think they're going to move on from Kirk Cousins after this season regardless. Seattle finished the game very poorly last Sunday against Tennessee, and I'm going to take Minnesota to beat Seattle 31-27 because, look, Seattle's run defense, albeit Derrick Henry makes every rushing defense look bad, but they could not stop a nosebleed, and this was the same case last year. This is a bad Seattle defense. As for Minnesota, it's their first home game of the season, and look, they can move the ball in a lot of teams. This is a good offense. Kirk Cousins is, for all my criticisms, he is an above-average quarterback. Adam Thielen is an excellent receiver. Justin Jefferson is even better. Irv Smith's a good tight end. Dalvin Cook's one of the best running backs in the league. This is an offense that can score on you. Russell Wilson will keep Seattle in the game as he does and will do multiple times this season for Seattle. But I'm going to take the Vikings to win this one in an upset, 31-27, and get their first win of the season. And finally, last game on Sunday. I can't wait for this one, just personally as somebody who doesn't really like the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay against San Francisco. Now, what have I always said about Green Bay in the Matt LaFleur era? When they face physical teams, it ain't the same team. Let's go back to 2019. The 3 games they lost in the regular season, all 3 to teams that ran the football well and played great defense up front and had a great front 7. Philadelphia, Los Angeles Chargers, and this team, the San Francisco 49ers, who they would go on to get blown out for a second time in the NFC Championship game. The Rams absolutely clobbered them. I think the final score was like 37-17, and San Francisco was like up 27-0 at halftime. And the game was over before it really even had a chance to get started. And Green Bay last year, even when Aaron Rodgers won the MVP, when they faced physical teams, it didn't go too well. They lost to the Colts, who run the football well, who play great defense, have a great front 7, right? They got clobbered by Tampa Bay in week 6 on the road. In the NFC Championship game, what happened? They're at home, at Lambeau. At that point, we were in a much worse situation with, as far as fans not being in the stadiums back in January. They had more fans in the stadium than they had all year, and they still completely got outplayed by the Buccaneers. They never had a lead, and Tampa Bay ended their season. San Francisco's healthy now. It will be a different story than when Green Bay beat them handily last year on Thursday Night Football. The 49ers will win this game. They're favored, by the way, -3.5. I think that is being far too kind to the Green Bay Packers. Listen, Green Bay's defense isn't very good. I don't know if you've not been able to tell that, but they gave up 38 to the Saints, and they gave up 17 in the first half to the Detroit Lions before they finally got their act together against Jared Goff, of all people. But they're going on the road. Last 2 times they played a healthy San Francisco team, both games were over at halftime. So I'm going to take the 49ers, to win this game 31-20. Jimmy G plays well. They run the football well. I'm telling you, you plug any running back. I haven't even heard of some of the running backs that they're putting in there. But they have a great offensive line, and Kyle Shanahan, in my view, has a run-first philosophy better than any coach in the NFL. He commits to it. They built their team around it, and they're going to run all over Green Bay. Jimmy G is going to make the throws that he needs to, and the 49ers are going to stay undefeated and go to 3-0. The Packers, no big deal, Aaron Rodgers, are going to drop to 1-2. What's Aaron going to say on Sunday night when the Packers drop their game against San Francisco? I thought about going with a higher score, or at least a bigger margin of victory for the 49ers, but they didn't look overly impressive last week, against Philadelphia. But they're at home. First home game of the season for them as well. Crowd in Santa Clara is going to be crazy. 49ers have a great fan base, and this is going to be a long day for Green Bay. A long day for Mr. Rogers in his neighborhood. So with that is all the time we have for tonight's show. We appreciate y'all stopping by. Be sure to catch Carving It Up on Monday, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you're on YouTube, by the way, be sure to click that big red subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share. Helps the show grow exponentially. Really helps if you've been listening to Carving It Up podcast. We appreciate that. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Each live episode is on those podcasting platforms approximately an hour after each show. So, again, we've got some amazing NFL games on Sunday. It's the gift, baby, that keeps on giving. I can't wait. Got a Monday night game to predict between my Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'll predict that on Monday and I'll, of course, react to all the games on Sunday. So with that, everybody have a great weekend. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out.